Welcome to the X's and Argos film session for Game 13, Week 16 of the CFL season. My name is Ben Grant. In the rematch against the Ottawa REDBLACKS this week, the Toronto Argonauts scored 45 points. That's their highest output that they've had since they put up 46 in 2019, also against the Ottawa REDBLACKS. But what's really interesting about this game is that 42 of those 45 points came off Ottawa turnovers. Now, I don't know how to look this up. I don't know if that's an Argos record or even a CFL record. But if it's not, I guarantee it's close. That is a ton of points to put up off turnovers. 42. It's ridiculous. And points off turnovers are what make turnovers really count. You take away the potential to score from the other team and you add to your own totals. It's kind of like winning a divisional game where, one team gets knocked back, one team propels forward. And so this was absolutely optimal for the Argonauts. Let's take a look at how those 42 points off turnovers were scored. So the second quarter is when this all got going. Ottawa with 1st and 5, and they've got a 3-point lead, having just picked off McLeod Bethel-Thompson as well, this pass into the end zone. So Ottawa's got the momentum at this point, but they're about to make a critical mistake. Ottawa's got trips left. Argos are in cover one across the board pre-snap, but they're going to check out of it on this side when the receivers start to bunch a little bit here. They're going to end up sticking a man in the boundary, but I want you to keep your eyes on Carnell right here. So he's got Darvin Adams, who's in the slot here. He's going to end up running a post, which you never really like against cover one. And it looks like Arbuckle thinks he's going to read what we call middle of the field closed and cut it across the field instead of running right into coverage, right, with your post, which makes sense. That you're not generally aiming to run right into coverage when there's a read route or another option. And you've got the fake pitch here. This fake pitch action is supposed to draw the linebackers up, leaving this void space where you would expect Adams to turn that dig inside. Carnell's got depth, and that is going to allow him to actually keep an eye on the quarterback. And when he sees Arbuckle start into his throwing motion, staring right at Adams, Carnell knows that Adams is about to break off his route. And it can't be a go because Adams still hasn't closed down the cushion that Carnell established. So Arbuckle obviously wouldn't throw that. So it's got to either be a dig or a hook. Now Carnell slams on the brakes. He cuts in front of Adams, makes the pick. This is on Arbuckle for staring down the receiver. It might be on Adams too for not reading that safety properly. If this was a read route, if in this the design of this play in this offense, this is supposed to turn into a dig, which I think it should, then this is on Adams too. But Carnell's still got to make that play, and he did. This is a fantastic pick. 2 plays later, Toronto on the Ottawa 3-yard line, and Bethel-Thompson's going to cash this in. So we got man coverage from Ottawa, and they're also going to kind of bracket Ambles here. This looks like cover one, but it's sort of a bracket on Ambles. And they obviously saw Ambles as a threat down here, and I think correctly so, based on what we've seen in past games. Bethel-Thompson's going to fake the pitch inside to Gittens Jr., which I love. They've got so many plays now off of this Gittens sort of jet action. And then Bethel-Thompson's going to roll out to his right. He wants Banks right away on the fade. That's his primary, but it isn't there. And he sees that Ambles has drawn double coverage. He's also got Malden closing in like a freight train. And so Bethel-Thompson knows it's either Ouellette or I'm throwing this out of bounds. But he's going to buy as much time as he possibly can, waiting for Ouellette to free himself, to make a play somehow. And Ouellette gets a little bit of a push off, but frankly, I think this is really well executed. It's not the kind of push off that's going to get called. It just creates a little bit of separation. I'm pro push off. It's all the space he needs. He hauls it in for the touchdown. And to go further into that a little bit, like, yes, push offs are illegal, but not getting flagged on push offs is an art that all great receivers develop. Look, offensive linemen, defensive backs, they hold and they're not allowed to, but it happens on every play. You've just got to appreciate the art of not getting called. And that's what you got from Ouellette here. It's not a true push off. He's just kind of feeling where the defender is and prevents him from closing a little bit. So they go for 2 after this, cash in on that too to Tavares Daniels. It's 8-3 Argos, and we've got 8 points so far off turnovers. 11-6 now, another Arbuckle interception coming up. This one's really similar to the first. You've got a receiver running a poor route. Arbuckle's staring him down the whole way. Let's just take a look at the concept on this side. So Ryan Davis, he's got a seam, and you're not going to throw this route much. This is going to serve 2 purposes, though. So it's going to keep Edwards, the Sam, from expanding too far. And it's also going to set a spike release, which I've talked before about on previous film sessions. It'll set the spike release for Bahar coming across on the flats route. I don't really like Bahar's route. I don't know what the design's supposed to be. Either he's running it terribly or it's just poorly designed, one of the two. I want him along the line of scrimmage because that's going to stretch out the flats defender. Tavon Smith has a 10-yard hook, but with Bahar getting this kind of depth on his flat route, Deshaun Amos, who's the flats defender, can just plunk himself down comfortably between both guys, and they're both covered. So right now, he's standing in front of Smith, so you can't throw to Smith, but he can easily get to Bahar because this is such a long throw across the field. Arbuckle stares Bahar down, and it's an easy pick for Amos. He times his jump beautifully, and he shows great hands. I like practice drills that simulate things you see in games, where you see something in the practice field and you're like, oh yeah, that duplicates this game scenario exactly. And you watch Coach Bell and Coach Fields at Argos practice. They've got this simulation running every single day. They even do it on their way over to Indy sessions. Coach Bell throws up jump balls for the DB. They work on their hands, they work on their timing. It's all the time. When they're not doing drills, they're not doing ladder drills or footwork. They're throwing up balls and getting those DBs practicing, making those picks. So 2 plays later, Argos are at the 21. Bethel Thompson's got all kinds of time on this. We're going to take a look at the job the offensive line does in a minute here. But yeah, Bethel Thompson has all day to throw. Now, first, I'm just going to stop here. So he wants Daniels on the corner post. We saw that route used effectively last week in my Gittins Jr. film piece. Bethel Thompson goes to throw it, but Damon Webb's going to come down and take it away. Now, go back to 2019. Bethel Thompson throws this ball in 2019, but 2022, Bethel Thompson has got 13 touchdowns and 1 interception inside the 25-yard line. He's not going to make those critical mistakes. He's going to look elsewhere. So he shifts his focus. He sees Banks coming across the goal line. He looks open briefly, but there's a risk here because Daniels and Webb are both tracking this way. And it's not like he can rocket it in there because this is Williams here who's expanding. And so he could get a hand on that ball and tip it up in the air, and now it's advantage to the defense. Now, Gittins, meanwhile, he probably has a seam route. I'm not 100% sure here, but I can't imagine that the play call was for him to run a 35-yard out. That just doesn't exist. So he's probably running a seam, and I assume that he saw his QB buying time and took off into open space. McLeod Bethel Thompson sees him break free, and he just fires this gorgeous touch pass that it travels almost 50 yards in the air. If you look at the release point and where it lands, this is a long pass, and it is right into KGJ's hands, right at the edge of the end zone for a touchdown. Great route adjustment, or great recognition too from Gittins, and just about as good a throw as you can make from Bethel Thompson. All right. Let's take a look at the line here from this other angle. So we got a 4-man underfront, and this angle is going to show you how wide the Ottawa ends were playing. You don't really get this perspective from, let me just bring that back up again, the sideline view. This is the same moment in time, but the ends don't look nearly as wide. We go back to the tight film, and yeah, it looks like they're miles out there. Which poses problems. It causes difficulties for the offensive lineman. This is tough when you don't know what's coming. You don't know if you're getting a late blitz or if there's a twist or a loop. It makes their job really difficult, as if it's not difficult enough already to stop 300-pound men rushing your quarterback. So this is just going to be a straight-up pass rush after all that. Ambles is gonna Ambles is gonna help out a little bit with a chip on praise Martin Oguike. Just a little chip. Ambles ate his Wheaties this morning. Obviously, he just Martin Oguike, he just eats the turf. It's not his fault. He doesn't see that coming. There's no one to call a crack coming this way, but not much you can do about that. The double team in the middle should always win, which it does. But I want to look at how Bladek has Coleman locked up and what a fantastic job Allen is doing over here on Malden. These are your two best pass blockers out on this side, and it's on full display on this play. And I don't, not to say that like Philip Blake can't pass block, but Philip Blake's an excellent pass blocker. But again, he's playing out of position. He's done a great job at left tackle. The whole line in general for being who they are, where they are. You've got rookies playing, you've got guys out of position. They've been great, but consistently Bladek and Allen all season long have been fantastic. And I know Allen's banged up, but yeah, he's doing a great job on Malden here. This is as clean a pocket as we've seen. And Bethel Thompson takes full advantage. So we see that little pump to Daniels. It's not there. A little pump to Banks. It's not there. And then he sees Gittins Jr. heading for daylight, drops it in right into the basket. That's now 15 points off turnovers after the extra point conversion. Missed field goals are deadly in the CFL. We saw that in Saskatchewan with Mario Alford. Unlike kickoff team, the field goal team it's mostly the big guys, right? They're crammed into the middle of the field. You do have a couple linebackers out there, but it's mostly the big men. And once the kick's away, they've got to burst into full field coverage, which is way more difficult for a lineman type than it is for backers and DBs, running backs. But that's also why we're relying so heavily on these wings having such a major role in the coverage team. So we're going to look at Cassar and Hoyt. They're playing both wings here. Hoyt is actually, this is Hoyt over here. He's actually going to play contain on the far side of the field. So he's going to loop all the way around here. And you do that because, well, there's a few reasons, but the main one is it's harder to pick up. You're trying to account for, in the return setup, you're trying to account for containment. If you don't know where they're coming from, it makes it way more difficult. Dedman we know how good a returner he is. He does a nice job setting this up. He's going to start right, and that shifts the whole coverage team this way, and then digs back into the ground to get to the wide side of the field. He's going to outrun Achampong, and this is, again, part of the problem. Like, as Achampong as a defensive lineman is an amazing athlete, but again, in a foot race with Dedman, he's not going to win that one, especially when there's misdirection involved. And then he's going to break a tackle attempt from Smith, and now all that remains between he and miles of open field is Jack Cassar. Cassar is going to break down here, get wide. Dedman tries to juke to the outside. Cassar is just having none of it. The ball flashes. Cassar pounces on it. He rips it right out of Dedman's hands, secures it. I think he's almost surprised that he was able to pull it away so easily. But that's the strength of Jack Cassar. And this gives the Argos the ball at the 8-yard line. This is just a pure strength and desire play from Cassar. And Dedman didn't have a lot of say in the matter. 2 plays later, it is 3rd and goal. This is the Chad Kelly package coming in, doing its thing. Ottawa's in super tight, like we've seen before. And if you haven't seen the short yardage film session I did a few weeks back, it's worth looking at too, because you can see why Chad Kelly is going wide here. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but suffice to say, Ottawa is stacking the A gaps. And they've already shown that they're only going to track double motion down here with one guy. And so when we've got our two-man bobsled team coming across, Ambles and Brissett, only Webb is going to track them. And so they're able to get the edge pretty easily. And one thing I don't like here, this is an easy touchdown for Chad Kelly. I don't like how wide he goes at the end. He is too important to this team to take unnecessary hits like this. There's a massive window. Chad Kelly's got to just step up in there, take the touchdown. I don't know why he goes so wide and takes a shot like this. It's a touchdown nevertheless, and he doesn't seem to be like any worse for wear, but Chad Kelly, do not take hits. This team needs you, is going to need you. We don't need you picking up unnecessary contact. That's 22 points, by the way, off turnovers now if you're keeping score at home. So for this next interception, we're going to focus in on Wynton McManus. Just watch him as I let this run. He's going to take his read steps because of the play action and then back out, and he's picking up Arbuckle's eyes. This is a little iffy. The center is pretty close to being illegally downfield. They usually let this go for a few yards. It's right borderline. But McManus is watching Arbuckle. He knows that the ball is coming this way, so he doesn't want to get engaged at all. Linebackers never want to get engaged with an offensive lineman coming to block them, obviously. But here he sees a job that he's got to do. And so he sheds with some pretty good force to create space and then times his jump perfectly. This is not an easy ball to come down with because he's so close to the quarterback, but we know how good his hands are. And then after the pick, he escapes and it manages to bring it back 24 yards on the return and set up the offense at the Ottawa 36-yard line. And that's the beauty of it. Turnovers lead to short fields. We saw it in the last turnover, setting up at the 8, and here we are now at the Ottawa 36. Short fields lead to points. So after getting a first down, Bethel Thompson is going to air this one out to Ambles on a seam route. Ambles ran across the safety's face a few times last game, and this is Coach Dinwiddie scheming just to give them different looks. They watched the film of that again and again and again, and now when he goes with this hard inside step, it's meant to turn the defender around. It doesn't actually work here, and I think that might be because this is Cranston here, and when you change up personnel, it's not quite as effective as, if he was running against one of the guys he saw last week. But yeah, it's meant to create or sort of force the defender to speed turn to get back into this play. It doesn't work in that sense, but it does enough to allow him to get free of Cranston. And just like we've seen so many times in this game, you can't throw it any better than Bethel Thompson does here. It's a deep ball on the money, and Ambles is going to see it all the way through. They missed the extra point on this one, so we're now at 28 points scored off turnovers. Here we've got a little bit of a rarity for Toronto, 2nd and 7, and we're going to get a zero blitz, which they just don't do a lot. The Argos DBs here, actually, let me just talk about this for a second, because this is a really interesting technique that they're firing off with here. With the zero blitz, a 2nd and 7 situation or something similar, 2nd and mid, a lot of defensive coordinators, when they play zero in these sets or in these situations, want to press. They know the ball's coming out fast and they want to have their guys up close to the line of scrimmage. They don't want to allow an easy completion. And clearly this is different. They're not way off either. And you do sometimes see that when a coach is afraid because there's no help over top. That's not what we've got here. So the field side DBs, they've got their heels at 10 yards. The boundary guys are a little tighter because the receivers on this side are closer to the quarterback, so that just makes sense. And the strategy here is they're coming downhill, and they're only coming downhill. They're preparing to come forwards. That's it. Their weight is shifted forwards. They'll make adjustment steps as need be, but you're not going to see them bailing out no matter what. They're ready to sprint forward and pick off a panicked hot route or sight adjustment because they know the quarterback's not going to have time to do anything else. Now, as it turns out, Toronto gets pretty lucky on this play. It looks like Carnell communicates a switch here when he sees Acklin come underneath. But this is pretty short notice for a switch, and I don't think Peters is expecting it. Gets the call late, and he ends up being late chasing this go route. Fortunately for the Argonauts, Evans doesn't see it because his man is wide open. Peters was just a step slow on that because, again, it's a pretty tough position to put Peters in. But the nice thing about zero is that the quarterback doesn't have time to read the field. He's just looking for his main guy, in this case, Acklin. And in theory, this should be a great little pick route against this coverage. But he doesn't count on Carnell making that switch. And from this inside position, Carnell's able to jump the route, pick off the ball. And I want you to look at this run back because The run back here is even more impressive than the pick itself. I don't know if Carnell played any running back at Lincoln High School back in San Diego. Maybe at JUCO, maybe in college. I don't know if he ever got any snaps as a ball carrier, but he looks like he did. He's got this jump step to the inside to avoid a tackle, and he drops a little step back on Smith coming across here in for 6. This is now 35 points off turnovers as we head into our last play for the 42. So Argos are sending 7 again. You could tell all game Ottawa was not expecting the heat that Toronto gave them because they just didn't really show it in the previous week. And they're not a team that likes to blitz. And so you had a lot of bad decisions. And this is a terrible decision from Caleb Evans. I've talked to you in previous film sessions about going to where you've got a numbers advantage if you're the quarterback. So if you've got quads and there's 3 DBs out there covering, well, that's where you want to go. Here we've got twins and we've got split backs, but there's 3 DBs to this side. And there's only 2 DBs to this side. So this is where you go every time. And look, it's on Evans for going to the wrong side. He's going to come down here with the 3 Argos DBs. But if you watch Darvin Adams, let me just pause it at the snap of the ball. Look, he's not helping his quarterback out. At the snap, he's 5 yards off the ball. This is what you want over here on this side. Look at the timing here. The waggle should be an advantage, not a hindrance. You start your play 5 yards on your own side of the line of scrimmage, you're at a disadvantage because the timing is going to be off. Not only that, this is a really poorly run hook route. He's going to let his body drift downfield instead of cutting back sharply. But honestly, I have no idea what's going on in this concept. Like, why is Johnson here? Him being here is just going to bring another defensive back to this party. And as Adams waits for the ball, instead of coming back to it, which he should also be doing here, we've got 3 Argos defenders within a few yards of the intended receiver. And that's always going to be bad. Something bad is going to happen. Amos gets a hand on it. Now Adams gets a hand on it too, but then McFadden tips it up in the air. And there's 3 Argos players going for the ball, 1 Red Black going for the ball. You know who the odds favor there. Chris Edwards is going to pick it out of the air. And this is why you don't throw into a numbers disadvantage. Now we'll look at the run back. Once the ball's in Edwards' hands, you can forget about this. It feels like deja vu. It feels like one of these every couple games where Edwards is running one back for 6. Usually it's against Hamilton, but REDBLACKS, he's got some experience in that regard too. So you watch the run back. He's patient, waits for his blocks, and as soon as a player commits, he's just going to make his move. And this is why Chris Edwards keeps sneaking into punt return reps at practice, because he's really good at it and he knows it. And there we've got our 42 points off turnovers. There's nothing better than complementary football, and that's what we saw last week in Ottawa. The defense constantly giving the offense a short field to work with, and the offense constantly cashing it in. We saw turnovers created by Toronto's defense and special teams units. We saw touchdowns by the offense and by the defense. Fans of the Argonauts have been waiting for their team to string together a game like this, where every unit is on point. Well, this is the game. This is what it looks like, Argos fans, when all units are firing. Thank you so much for tuning into this X's and Argos film session. My name is Ben Grant. I will see you next time.